Don Kelley, and my wife Kim and I live near Nemo, South Dakota. We have a little 60-acre farm that's maybe 20 miles from Rapid City. Well, although my wife and I have medical backgrounds, we've been homesteading, trying to grow most of our food out here on this little farm for 23 years now. And I guess the idea behind that is some degree of self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and so this fit pretty well with that. We felt that it would be really nice to not be dependent on the grid, and you know, we also anticipate that as years go by that certainly fossil fuel based energy is going to be much more expensive. The idea was to save as much as we could in heating expense as well, and so the building has a whole lot of thermal mass. That means that it's got a lot of concrete and masonry that absorbs heat, and then you've got a lot of south-facing glass which takes the sun's energy during the day, and it stores it within that thermal mass, radiates it during night, and so the amount of heating you need to add is pretty small, really is. The other thing that helps is that it's bermed around three sides, so you know, the Earth's temperature is pretty stable and relatively cool in the summer and warm in the winter. So you saved quite a bit of energy by doing that. Well, the passive solar design that we've tried to incorporate includes a lot of south-facing glass. This wing of the building faces true south, and that's why we put the photovoltaic panels on that roof. But we used a wall construction that is a 12-inch thick wall. We started out using what they call poured masonry construction and finished up with masonry block construction. And so that in itself gives you a lot of thermal mass, which is good for absorbing and then re-radiating heat. We have a thick concrete slab that's underlying the first floor of the building. And then as we went up with the second story, we used a whole lot of insulation. And again, it seems to me that insulation is always a good investment. You know, that when it comes to sizing the amount of heat source you're going to have, that it works out to be very cost effective to add a lot of insulation. So that's what we've done there. The idea with a passive solar home is that it tends to be long in the east-west direction, so that the sun gets a chance to heat most of the depth of the building. You also then want to size the overhangs or the shading so that you get real good wintertime solar exposure. You get a lot of sun making it into the building when the sun is low in the sky in the winter, but you want some shade as it gets higher in the sky during the summer. And so there actually are formulas that you can consult that help you size those things. Well, we decided to go with photovoltaic or PV solar electric panels on this new house for several reasons. One of which was that we're about a mile from the nearest utility hookup, and so it was going to be pretty expensive just to run an underground cable to provide electricity to this site. But we also thought, you know, that's kind of a cool project, and we liked the thought that once we got it all built that we wouldn't be paying electric bills in the future. So we sized the system based on what we were using in our previous home. We have an old farmhouse on the same property. And we were using, between 300, 400 kilowatt hours per month at the old house. And so we found that it was going to be feasible to design a system that would provide just about that same amount of energy that was within our budget. So you got these components that are, again, off the shelf type units, and you start out with direct current coming from the roof panels that go to this thing, which is a charge controller. It's computer driven, and it puts a big charge on the batteries first thing in the morning when it senses that the sun is hitting the panels, and then monitors how much is being used during the day, and if it needs more charging, it adds more juice to the system. And then you've got a bunch of breakers here, which are DC breakers, direct current, and they allow you to isolate components if anything needed service. You have a meter here that tells you whether amps are coming in or going out and how much. And then you have two inverters. We do with this system because we needed 240 volts for some things. For instance, the well pump is 240 volts. And so each of these inverters is 120 volts, and you have two legs to support the 240 volts. Here you've got some alternating current breakers. The idea with the inverters is that you've converted from direct current to alternating current, so it's just like any house current from that point onward. And these AC breakers again enable you to cut out everything that's upstream. If you wanted, for instance, to use a generator to run everything in the house, you could do that by cutting things out and enabling the generator. And we thought we might need one, but we haven't as yet. We haven't used a generator. All you typically would need it for would be to put a super big charge on the batteries periodically, which is good for their health. But it turns out that we get enough sun and enough input from the solar panels that we're able to do that just with the solar panels alone, so we haven't needed a generator. And from that point on, after this box, all you've got is just a regular load center, just like in any house, because what you're dealing with is a regular house current. So here's the battery bank. It's a 48 volt system, and what we have here are two strings of batteries, each of which add up to 48 volts. Each of these individual batteries is 6 volts. And so you got a series string of 48 volts in 8 batteries, and then another string, same voltage, which is in parallel, and the idea there is just to increase the amp hours or capacity of the system. And you size a battery system like this based on the assumption that you'd like to be able to support all the loads in the house for a period when you might not have much solar input. And so you maybe decide on 2 days worth of your usual load, and try to see if you got enough battery bank then to support all that without additional solar input for a couple of days. These batteries are what they call deep cycle batteries, which means that you can draw them down to, say, perhaps 20% of their capacity without doing any severe damage to them, which is different from automotive batteries, which are designed for just a real brief, big time discharge. But these you can gradually discharge for long periods and bring them back up to charge without doing any real harm to them. As you maybe know, as you are charging batteries, lead acid type batteries like these, there is some hydrogen gas that bubbles off during the charge cycle. And so one thing that we've done with this system is to add this ductwork and a little fan, a little inline fan, which comes on automatically as the battery bank is being charged. When the battery bank reaches a certain voltage maximum, then that fan comes on and it sucks any gases that are within this container up and gets vented out through the roof vents in the attic. I would encourage people, for one thing, to push on their legislators to try to make South Dakota a place where it is more and more feasible to do this sort of thing. For one thing, there is the possibility in other states that rather than having a battery bank as we do, that you could tie into the grid, simply sell your excess electricity to the utility. But in South Dakota, the rate structure is such that that's not very appealing. It's not a big incentive yet. I think South Dakota is one of only 4 states at this point that doesn't have some sort of net metering law. And I think it's time, I really do.